There is a level of strength where hesitation disappears. Not because life becomes easier, but because you no longer negotiate with yourself. Have you ever noticed how some people never break? They don't overthink, they don't delay, they don't wait for the perfect moment. While everyone else is trapped between intention and excuses, they move. And the truth is, most people misunderstand this. They think strength is built by adding more motivation, more hacks, more discipline. But what if the real path is the opposite? What if strength is not about adding, but about removing everything that makes you weak? 400 years ago, a man in Japan proved this. Musashi. He fought over 60 duels. He never lost, not because he was the strongest, not because he was the fastest, but because he eliminated everything unnecessary. Fear, hesitation, dependency, distraction. He didn't build power, he revealed it. And if you're watching this, there's a high chance you're stuck in the same loop most people never escape. You know what to do, but you don't do it. You start, then stop. You promise, then break it. You push, then collapse. So let me tell you something most people will never admit. The problem has never been your effort. It has never been your potential. It's your system. And in this video, you're going to see how one ordinary man completely transformed his mind and body, using the exact principles Musashi lived by. But more importantly, you'll see how you can do the same. If at any point you recognize yourself in this story, just comment 1 below, because this isn't just a story, it's a mirror. And what you're about to see might change the way you see yourself forever. Chapter 1. The collapse. If you're watching this, there's a chance you've already experienced it. That quiet moment, when you realize you can't trust yourself anymore. Lucas was 32 years old, an engineer, a husband, a father of 2. From the outside, his life looked stable, but inside, something was breaking. Every morning, he made the same promise. I'll start today. He would wake up early, train his body, focus at work, be present with his family. And every night, he failed. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone could see, just small betrayals. Hitting snooze 7 times, skipping workouts, avoiding difficult conversations, choosing comfort over action again and again. At first, it felt normal. Everyone struggles, right? But over time, something worse happened. He stopped believing his own words. And that's where real weakness begins. Not when you fail, but when you expect yourself to fail. One afternoon, everything collapsed. Lucas was in an important meeting. His boss was speaking. Colleagues were watching. And suddenly his chest tightened. His heart started racing. His hands began to shake. The room felt like it was closing in. He couldn't breathe. He stood up abruptly, mumbled something, and walked out. Panic attack. Later, the doctor told him something simple. There's nothing wrong with your body. Your mind just doesn't know the difference between discomfort and danger. That sentence stayed with him, because deep down, he knew it was true. He wasn't weak because life was hard. He was weak because his mind was untrained. Every uncomfortable moment felt like a threat. Every challenge felt like something to escape. So he avoided, delayed, distracted himself, until avoidance became his identity. That night, sitting alone in silence, Lucas faced a question he had been running from his entire life. What if the problem isn't my life, but the way I respond to it? And for the first time, he didn't look for motivation. He looked for a system, because somewhere deep inside, he understood something most people never do. If you can't control your mind, nothing else in your life will ever stay under control. Chapter 2. The principle of elimination. The first thing Lucas discovered wasn't a technique. It wasn't a routine. It wasn't a secret workout plan or a productivity system. It was a sentence. Simple, cold, uncomfortable. Do nothing which is of no use. Those words came from Miyamoto Musashi. At first, Lucas didn't understand. What does that even mean? Of course, everything has some use. Rest is useful. Comfort is useful. Even distraction feels useful in the moment. But the deeper he looked, the more disturbing the truth became. Most of what he did every day had no real purpose. Scrolling without intention, eating without awareness, thinking without direction, delaying what mattered, while convincing himself he was preparing. He wasn't living with intention, he was reacting. And that's when the realization hit him. His problem wasn't lack of discipline, it was too many dependencies. He needed the perfect mood to act, the right energy to start, the ideal conditions to stay consistent. And without them, he did nothing. Musashi trained in the opposite way. He didn't wait for the right conditions. He removed the need for them. Rain or sun, he trained. Tired or energized, he trained. Alone or surrounded, he trained. Because the moment your action depends on conditions, you've already lost control. Lucas decided to test this principle, not with something big, but with something so simple. There was no excuse left. Push-ups, no gym, no schedule, no preparation, just his body and the floor. 20 push-ups, every day, no matter what. The first few days felt easy, but then life started pushing back. A long day at work, a bad night of sleep, travel, stress, illness. This was where he always failed before. But this time, something was different. He remembered the rule, never zero. If he couldn't do 20, he did 10. If he couldn't do 10, he did 5. But he never allowed himself to do nothing. Because zero is not rest. Zero is a decision. And every time you choose zero, you reinforce the version of yourself that quits. Slowly, something began to change. Not in his body, but in his identity. He was no longer someone who tried to be consistent. He became someone who didn't stop. And that's when Lucas understood the real meaning of elimination. It's not about removing effort, it's about removing excuses, removing conditions, removing negotiation, removing the version of you that waits instead of acts. Because when there is nothing left to debate, action becomes automatic. Chapter 3. The Still Mind. By day 40, Lucas had changed. Not dramatically, not in a way that impressed anyone else, but something inside him was becoming stable. He no longer skipped his push-ups. He no longer negotiated with himself every morning. Action had started to become automatic, but there was still a problem: his mind. Because even though his body was getting stronger, his thoughts were still chaotic. Anxiety about work, fear of failure, overthinking every conversation. He could control his actions, but he couldn't control what was happening inside. And that's where most people stop. They build habits, but remain prisoners of their own thoughts. That's when Lucas discovered a concept Musashi considered more important than strength itself. Ihoshin, the everyday mind, the mind that does not change. It sounds simple, but think about it. Most people have different minds for different situations. One mind when things are easy, another when things get uncomfortable, and a completely different one when pressure appears. That's why they break, because their identity is unstable. Musashi taught something radical. Your mind in chaos must be the same as your mind in peace. No panic, no excitement, no internal explosion, just awareness. Lucas didn't understand how to do this at first. How do you stay calm when everything inside you is screaming? So he started small. The next time anxiety appeared, instead of reacting, he observed, not trying to fix it, not trying to escape it, just noticing. My heart is racing, my breathing is shallow, my chest feels tight. No judgment, no story, just observation. At first, it was unbearable. Every instinct in his body told him to react, to distract himself, to escape the discomfort. But he stayed, and something strange happened. The more he observed, the less power it had. The sensation didn't disappear, but it stopped controlling him. A few days later, he faced a real test. A meeting at work. His boss was frustrated. The room was tense. This was exactly the kind of moment where Lucas used to freeze, and the feeling came again. Fast heartbeat, tight chest, rising pressure. But this time, he didn't fight it. He noticed it, and then he spoke. Calm, clear, present, no shaking, no hesitation. The room felt it immediately, because when someone doesn't react, they become different. That was the first time Lucas accessed something real. Not confidence, not motivation, control. And he realized something most people never understand. You don't control your mind by forcing it to be quiet. You control it by refusing to obey it, because thoughts will always come. Fear will always appear. But the moment you stop reacting automatically, you take your power back. And that is where real strength begins. Chapter 4. The Body That Doesn't Negotiate. By now, Lucas had done something most people never do. He proved that he could act without relying on motivation. But there was still a hidden weakness: his body. Because no matter how calm your mind becomes, if your body cannot endure pressure, your mind will eventually follow it into collapse. This is something Miyamoto Musashi understood deeply. He didn't separate mind and body. To him, they were the same system. And his rule was simple. When the body is weak, the mind wavers. When the body is strong, the mind remains steady. Lucas had been consistent with his push-ups, but consistency is not the same as capacity. He had never truly pushed his limits, so he made a decision, one that scared him. 100 push-ups a day, for 30 days, no matter how long it took, no matter how he felt. Day 1 was manageable. It took time, but he finished. Day 3, his arms burned. Day 5, he started doubting the decision. Day 7, he wanted to quit. Not because he couldn't continue, but because his mind started negotiating again. This is too much. You don't need to go this far. Missing one day won't matter. The same voice, the same pattern, just wearing a different mask. But this time, Lucas recognized it. He didn't argue. He didn't motivate himself. He just continued. Slow reps, breaks when needed, but always finishing. Because the goal was not performance. It was obedience. By day 15, something shifted. The pain was still there. The fatigue didn't disappear. But his relationship with it changed. He stopped resisting it. And when you stop resisting discomfort, it loses its ability to control you. By day 20, he no longer questioned the task. He just did it. No internal conversation. No emotional drama. Just execution. And on day 30, he completed 100 push-ups without stopping. But that wasn't the real victory. The real victory was this. He had removed the idea that something was too hard for him, because once you prove to yourself that you can continue under pressure, you stop negotiating with difficulty. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" You replace it with, "Do it anyway." And that is the moment your body stops being a limitation and becomes a weapon, not because it's perfect, but because it obeys, without hesitation. Chapter 5. Zanshin, the mind that remains. By the 3rd month, Lucas was no longer the same man. His body was stronger, his actions were consistent, his mind no longer reacted the way it used to. But there was still one hidden weakness. He only stayed focused while he was doing something. The moment the task ended, he relaxed completely. And that's where most people lose everything. They finish the workout, then become careless. They complete the task, then disconnect. They achieve a result, then go back to old patterns. This is why progress disappears. Not during the effort, but after it. This is what Miyamoto Musashi called Zanshin, the mind that remains. It doesn't mean tension. It doesn't mean stress. It means presence that doesn't disappear. Even after the action is done, Musashi warned about warriors who won a duel and died seconds later. Not because they were weak, but because they relaxed too early. They believed it was over. But life doesn't end when you think it does, and neither does the test. Lucas realized he was living the same way. He would complete his push-ups and immediately collapse on the floor. He would finish a task and instantly grab his phone. He would solve a problem and disconnect from awareness. Every time he did this, he lost the lesson. So he changed one small thing. After every action, he stayed. After push-ups, he stood still for 30 seconds, breathing, aware, present. After a meeting, he didn't check his phone. He sat and replayed what happened. What did I feel? Where did I hesitate? Where was I strong? Not judging, just observing. At first, it felt unnecessary, even uncomfortable, because his mind wanted stimulation. It wanted escape, but he stayed, and slowly, something powerful happened. His awareness started to extend, not just during action, but between actions, and that's where real growth happens. Because most people only live in moments of effort, but the strongest individuals live in continuous awareness. They don't switch on and off, they remain. Within weeks, people started noticing. You're different. You're more present. You don't seem distracted anymore. But Lucas understood the truth. He wasn't doing more. He was just not leaving. Not leaving the moment. Not leaving awareness. Not leaving himself. And that is the difference between temporary discipline and permanent transformation. Because when your awareness stays, your growth stays with it. And when your awareness disappears, everything you built disappears too. Chapter 6. Fudoshin, the unshakable mind. Strength is easy when nothing is at risk. It's easy to stay calm when everything is going your way, but the real test doesn't come in comfort. It comes in the moment when everything starts to fall apart. For Lucas, that moment came without warning. An emergency meeting. Short notice. No explanation. He walked into the room and immediately felt it. Something was wrong. His manager avoided eye contact. The atmosphere was heavy, too quiet. Then the words came. "We're restructuring the company, and your position has been eliminated." Just like that. No preparation, no control, no second chance. This was the exact situation that used to break him. The old Lucas would panic, heart racing, mind spiraling, thoughts collapsing into worst-case scenarios. What am I going to do? How will I tell my family? What if I fail again? But this time, something different happened. He felt the initial shock. Of course he did, because Fudoshin is not the absence of emotion. It is the refusal to be controlled by it. He noticed his breathing shift. He noticed the tension in his chest. And then, nothing. No spiral, no collapse, just presence. I see. What's the timeline? His voice was calm, steady, clear. The manager looked surprised. 30 days. I'm sorry, Lucas. He nodded, understood, and that was it. No drama, no reaction, just awareness, followed by action. Because in that moment, Lucas understood something most people never realize. The event is not what destroys you. Your reaction is. Outside the room, chaos, colleagues panicking, phone calls, complaints, fear spreading everywhere. But Lucas didn't join them, not because he didn't care, but because he had trained for this. Every uncomfortable moment before this had prepared him for this one. That same day, he updated his resume, reached out to contacts, scheduled interviews. No delay, no emotional recovery phase, just movement. Because when your mind doesn't collapse, your life doesn't pause. Over the next 3 weeks, while others were still stuck in fear, Lucas moved forward. Interview after interview, calm, focused, present. By day 23, he had 3 offers, better roles, higher pay, more freedom. But the real victory wasn't external, it was internal. For the first time in his life, he didn't break under pressure, and that is what Miyamoto Musashi meant by Fudoshin. The immovable mind, not because the storm never comes, but because when it does, you remain standing, unshaken, unaffected, and ready to act. Chapter 7. The Strategy of No Weakness. By now, Lucas had something most people never reach. Consistency, control, stability under pressure. But there was still one final shift he hadn't made. Because even with all this progress, he was still trying to win, trying to be better, trying to prove himself, trying to move faster than everyone else. And that was still a weakness, because the moment you try to win, you create pressure, you rush, you force, you overextend. And when you overextend, you expose yourself. This is something Miyamoto Musashi understood better than anyone. He didn't fight to win. He fought, not to lose. At first, that sounds passive, but it's not. It's precision. Because when you fight to win, you focus on the result. But when you fight not to lose, you focus on removing every weakness. No gaps, no careless mistakes, no unnecessary risks. Lucas began applying this immediately. At his new job, he didn't try to impress anyone. He didn't speak more than necessary. He didn't promise more than he could deliver. He simply did what he said every time. He arrived on time, delivered clean work, stayed consistent, no spikes, no drops, just reliability. And something strange happened. While others tried to stand out, he became impossible to ignore, because consistency is rare, and reliability is power. 3 months later, he was promoted, not because he was the most talented, but because he had no weaknesses. His manager told him directly, "You're not the smartest here, but you're the one I trust." And trust wins over talent every time. Lucas realized something profound. Most people lose not because they are weak, but because they leave openings. They break their word. They skip days. They act based on emotion. They chase intensity instead of consistency. And every one of those moments creates a gap, a place where failure can enter. So he changed his entire approach to life. In training, he didn't try to be perfect. He just never skipped. Indeed, he didn't try to be extreme. He just never chose what made him weaker. In relationships, he didn't try to say the perfect thing. He just never broke his word. No extremes, no fluctuation, just removal of weakness. And over time, this created something stronger than motivation, predictability. He became someone you could count on. Not sometimes, always. And that is what most people underestimate. Winning once is easy. Winning occasionally is normal. But becoming someone who doesn't lose, that's rare, because it requires something most people avoid, eliminating every version of yourself that still looks for shortcuts. And when you do that, you don't need to chase success anymore. Success has no choice but to come to you. Chapter 8. Letting Go of the Self. 6 months into the journey, Lucas had become unrecognizable. His body was strong, his mind was stable, his actions were consistent, but there was still something subtle. A hidden fear, not of failure, not of pressure, but of losing everything he had built. He caught himself thinking, what if I miss a day? What if I fall back into old habits? What if this version of me isn't permanent? And that fear was the final chain, because as long as you're afraid of losing your progress, you're still attached to it. And attachment creates tension. This is where Miyamoto Musashi introduced his most difficult teaching. Let go of the self, not your identity, not your values, but the version of you that needs recognition, needs validation, needs to prove something. Musashi wrote near the end of his life, I regret nothing, I fear nothing, I desire nothing. At first, this sounds impossible. How can someone reach that state? Lucas realized it wasn't about becoming fearless, it was about removing what creates fear. So he did something radical. He stopped tracking his progress. No more counting days, no more celebrating streaks, no more measuring results. He stopped posting, stopped comparing, stopped seeking validation. And for a moment, it felt empty. Because most people don't train for themselves. They train for proof. Proof that they're improving. Proof that they're better. Proof that they're not who they used to be. But Lucas removed all of that. And what remained was pure practice. No audience. No reward, no pressure, just action, day after day. And that's when the shift happened. He no longer felt like someone trying to stay disciplined. He became someone who simply acts. No identity to protect, no image to maintain, just movement. Because when you detach from outcomes, you stop fearing loss. And when you stop fearing loss, you become free. Free from failure, free from pressure, free from yourself. That's when Lucas understood the final truth. You can lose results, you can lose progress, you can lose everything external, but you cannot lose who you have become. And once your strength becomes your identity, nothing can take it away. That is the final level. Not control, not discipline, but freedom. Chapter 9. The Final Transformation. 1 year later, Lucas was no longer the same person. Not because he added something new, but because he removed everything that didn't belong. The hesitation was gone. The excuses were gone. The internal resistance, gone. But the biggest change wasn't what he did, it was who he became. Because at some point, something subtle shifted. He stopped trying, not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of no longer needing effort to act. Discipline was no longer a task, it was automatic, like breathing, like walking. There was no decision to make, because there was no alternative left. This is what Miyamoto Musashi meant when he reached the final stage of mastery. There is no separation between who you are and what you do. You don't practice discipline, you are discipline. Lucas noticed it in small moments. Waking up early, no resistance. Training, no negotiation. Handling pressure, no emotional spike. Life didn't become easier, but he became unbreakable. People around him started reacting differently, not with admiration, but with discomfort, because when someone removes excuses, they become a mirror, and most people don't like what they see. His co-workers stopped complaining around him. His friends stopped making jokes about laziness. Even his family began to say, "You've changed." And they were right, but not in the way they thought. He didn't become someone new. He became someone without interference. No wasted thoughts, no unnecessary emotion, no internal conflict, just clarity. And that clarity made him dangerous, not to others, but to the version of himself that used to quit. Because now, there was nothing left inside him that could. Lucas reflected on everything he had gone through, the panic, the inconsistency, the doubt, and he realized something most people never will. He didn't build strength, he uncovered it, by removing everything that was never him to begin with. And that is the final truth. You don't need more motivation. You don't need more time. You don't need a better version of yourself. You need to eliminate what's in the way. Because underneath the hesitation, underneath the fear, underneath the excuses, there is already a version of you that does not stop. The question is not whether you can become that person. The question is, how much are you willing to remove, to reveal them? Ending. The choice is yours. So now you've seen the path, not a theory, not motivation, not something temporary, but a process of removing everything that weakens you. Because in the end, that's what this entire journey was about, not becoming someone new, but uncovering who you are without interference. Miyamoto Musashi didn't become legendary because he added more techniques. He became untouchable because he removed hesitation, removed fear, removed dependency, removed the need for perfect conditions. And that's the part most people avoid, because adding feels exciting. New routines, new systems, new goals. But removing is uncomfortable. Removing excuses means you can't hide. Removing distractions means you must face yourself. Removing weakness means you lose the version of you that kept you safe. And most people choose comfort over truth. But not you, because if you've stayed until this moment, you already feel it. There's a part of you that knows exactly what needs to go. The habit, the distraction, the excuse you keep repeating. You don't need more information. You need a decision. So here's something simple. Tomorrow, don't change your whole life. Just remove one thing, one excuse, one delay, one moment where you would normally quit, and replace it with action. Small, imperfect, but real. Because that's how this begins. Not with intensity, but with elimination. If you're ready to start, comment yes below. Not for me, but for yourself. A signal that you're done negotiating. A signal that you're done waiting. And that from this point forward, you move. No matter what. Remember this, you don't need to become stronger. You need to stop being weaker. And that starts the moment you decide to remove what no longer belongs. The choice has always been yours, and it still is. So choose carefully, because only one path leads forward, and only action creates results. Always be present, walk with honor and faith, and follow your path.